Good morning, everyone. I'm Joanne Koontz. I'm here with my partner, Marina Parkin, and our monthly guest speaker, John Seiffer. As always, John is contributing some fun information and great topics for how to better run our businesses. So last time we had John on, we talked about how to craft a better job description in part one of how to hire. And today we're going to be looking more at how to find better candidates. So sourcing candidates and how to know what you're looking for. So as always, welcome, John. We appreciate you spending your time with us.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
As always, our webinars are recorded and they'll be distributed on our YouTube channel, on our Facebook pages, and on our firm websites, KoontzAssociates.com and KoontzParkin.com. And I'm sure John will be distributing this as well. So we will happily field your questions. If you would, please kindly use the Q&A box at the bottom. And if you have anything that you'd like to ask John, he'll be happy to answer you as well. We'll provide his contact details at the end. So thank you so much, John. So part two.
All right.
What do you know?
Let me get the screen going here.
You have always the best graphics.
Screen share. And wait, this
the magnifying glass, of course.
Oh, look, it's on Italy too. That's interesting.
Yes.
I should be scouring Italy for all of my next hires.
I think this is actually backwards because I wanted the magnifying glass on this side, so I reversed the image. So it's a little weird, but anyway. Most people think that the hiring process starts with finding candidates, but they're doing it wrong. So
shocking that everyone's doing it wrong.
Exactly. I want to thank Joanne and Marina for the opportunity to speak to you today. And my name is John Seiffer, and I've owned companies my entire adult life. I've never had a job. In 1994, I started helping other business owners learn from my mistakes at ceobootcamp.com. And I have wasted so many days hiring in an ineffective way. So today I'm going to share with you what I've learned about finding good candidates. Strap in and let's get started. In part one, the missing piece, we covered the 4 parts of a successful hiring program. And we focused on the first part, defining who you're looking for. This is known as a job description. But most job descriptions are not written in the most useful way. In that part, we covered the fact that it really needs to have these parts to it, and the character traits are the most important by far, even though skills are the most prevalent. So armed with that insight, we can now embark on the second phase, which is trying to find these people, discovering where they hang out. And it's important to keep in mind that hiring is a sales process. Mm-hmm. You have to define who you're looking for, and in sales, we call that a persona. In hiring, it's a job description, and then you have to generate leads. So in hiring, that means getting job applicants to come in, and that's what we're focusing on today. Usually when I share these things, I have a tool or a recipe or an algorithm that kind of works for everybody, but this one's a little different because the usefulness of each idea depends on what you are looking for exactly. Success depends on the details in your job description. And then at the end, I will cover 2 ideas that do apply to everybody no matter what you're looking for. And I often suggest that you don't write down what you see and hear today. Obviously, as Joanne said, this is going to be recorded. But write down what you'll do. My goal is to spark some action, not just to give you good ideas. And so I like to use OneNote. It's an electronic notebook for my CEO notebook, but if you like paper, that's fine. You should have some dedicated space where you keep your CEO notes. So having said that, my first suggestion is keep your eyes open. This works great when you care more about the character traits than the skills of somebody. And let me give you an example. I was at Bed Bath & Beyond one time, and I asked the guy who worked there where something was. I don't even remember what I was looking for. And he said, well, come on, follow me, as they always do. But as we went through the store, without missing a step, he was straightening things up. He was saying hi to people. He was picking stuff up off the floor. And I thought, that's the kind of guy, that's the character traits that I would love to have in an employee. I didn't have a spot for him right then, but that's the kind of thing I mean. often when you're looking for those kinds of character traits, particularly with entry-level positions or customer service positions, you will find people with those character traits in retail, in restaurant work. And so when you see people like that, latch on to them, connect with them, and we'll get into it at the end, what you do, even if you don't have an opening for that person, they can be part of your farm team, which I'll share how to do that later on. But keep your eyes open looking for those people now that you know what you want. If you're looking for skills, but you don't need a lot of experience, trade schools are often a good place to go. So these are people that have learned a skill, they don't have years of experience. Computer boot camps are now very popular. They're not officially a trade school. They often are much shorter programs, but they're great. They fall under this criteria of somebody learning a skill without a lot of experience. Even high schools and universities have placement departments. And again, depending on what you're looking for, university placement departments, for example, often work with alumni for years after they've graduated. So my suggestion is find the ones in your area that train people in the kinds of things you need and get to know somebody in that placement office. Make a relationship with them. They can sometimes even give you a good insight into their character besides the skills that they've learned. Job fairs are obviously a place where people are looking for jobs. So if that fits with what you're looking for, get a booth, or if it's permitted, just hang out and mingle there. Meetups are a little different. So maybe there's a place where lawyers hang out just to have a drink, or designers get together to talk about new ideas or new software, and they have these regular meetups. If it's proper etiquette that you can attend, then do it. You'll probably need to become part of the community and not just be in there as somebody who's recruiting, but they can be useful if it's appropriate. Recruiters are sometimes a good source of people who aren't even looking for a job, because sometimes the best people aren't. Even if they would love to work for you, they're just not, they're happy enough where they are, and recruiters often know these people and have relationships with them. Recruiters can be expensive, but they work well when you have a clearly defined opportunity and you'd like somebody else to do the first cut. Sometimes the biggest complaint I hear about using recruiters is they don't do a good job of filtering out that first cut. So just be prepared for that, but they can extend your reach to people, like I said, who aren't looking for a job and that you may not reach any other way. Your state Department of Labor may have a job board for you. And did any of you wince when I said Department of Labor, thinking, oh, this will never work? Well, you might be right, but hold on to that thought, and I'm going to come back to it in a few minutes. Another opportunity is employee referral programs. Do your employees even know what openings you have? And certainly, if you have a way of rewarding them, paying them a bonus for somebody they bring in who stays with you for 6 months or a year. Sometimes I hear people say they're afraid of people bringing in their friends because what if the friends don't work together well? What if I have to promote one and they're their friend's boss? What about nepotism if they bring in their relatives? If that's what's holding you back, I would suggest that's an indication that there's a bigger cultural problem in your organization. And you should solve that before you do this. But if that's not an issue, if you've got that culture that works well, then an employee referral program can be a great one. There are workforce development agencies. These are often nonprofits or government agencies. They help finding jobs for veterans or people coming out of prison, homelessness, people in recovery, etc. And sometimes there's a government program that pays the cost of bringing those people on, or some of the costs anyway. So those might be opportunities for some of you. And then, of course, there's ad sites and job boards, and there's a gazillion of these. Some of them are specific to an industry. So your industry might have a specific job board. There's, for general purposes, there's LinkedIn, ZipRecruiter, Craigslist, Indeed. This one is actually a screenshot from theladders.com, which specializes in salaries over $100,000 a year, but there's a lot of those. You will have competition in those, and you may be flooded with the wrong applicants till you figure out how to say the right things or how to make your situation stand out. But certainly that's a very common way to find people. And since people know to go there, there. They're looking for jobs. So learn how those job boards work, learn what works and what makes you stand out. And I'll give you a key in a minute that what that job board should point to, what your ad on that job board should point to. So I hope some of those ideas were useful for some of you, and I hope you found at least one that works for you. But now I want to get into a couple of ideas that are good for everybody. But don't forget how you felt when I brought up the Department of Labor. So the first one is tell everybody you know. And the way you do this is with a careers page on your website. I have a write-up on this on my website, ceobootcamp.com/careers-page, but I'll go over how you use it here because it's a really powerful tool. First of all, when we did the job description back in part one piece of the job hiring canvas was your offering. What are you? Why is your place a great place to work? And that's something you need to know here. And what you do is you make a page on your website called careers or openings or work here, whatever you want to call it. And that page is, you actually have to make several pages. That first page lists all of your positions. And that's the page that goes into the details of why your place is a great place to work. It has pictures and a lot of descriptions about it. And then it lists all the openings that you have with a link to a specific page about each opening. So you need a separate page for each position. But you also need a huge link on your homepage that says we're hiring. Not one of these little menu items up in the corner that says, you know, about us and services and contact us and, oh, we have careers, you know, actually make it big and bold. We're hiring. Let people know that. So you get these three parts. On the separate page for each position, include how somebody should apply. It's usually called a call to action, but you should make it specific, and you should also make it what I call a filter. So a filter is something that's relevant to that specific job that's geared to filter out the people who are inappropriate and filter in the people who are appropriate. So I'll give you some examples. If the job that you're hiring for needs a phone voice, then the first filter is let's do a phone interview. And you specify some times when you're going to be available and have people call you. And that's one filter. I knew a guy who had a company with trucks that were on the road all day, and they were dropping off these welcome mats that big office buildings have with their logo and their name in them. And he would pick them up every week and clean them and bring them back. His trucks left the warehouse at 6 a.m. So guess what? He had his interviews at 6 a.m. at the warehouse. And so that was his filter. If people didn't show up for the interview, they certainly weren't going to show up for work. Sometimes people have put an ad for a salesperson and said, what we'd like you to do first is look through our website and try to sell us our own products. And we'll set up an interview for that. Some people do an online quiz. If you want to apply, fill out, they just used a Google form. Here's 6 or 7 questions. It kind of eliminates the people who think they have experience but don't have the knowledge that you particularly need. So some kind of filter like this should be in your page about how to apply. Now that you've got those pages, and specifically the page about that particular position, here's what you do with it. You make a link to that page, you make a PDF to that page, and you send those two things around to everybody you know. And I literally mean everybody, your customers, your vendors. Vendors are often a good source because they kind of know the industry and they know who might be moving, et cetera. But send it to your employees, send it to your friends, neighbors, your Uncle Sid, your CPA, your doctor, your lawyer, your Indian chief, and say to them, we're hiring, we're looking for, you know, just give we're looking for a left-handed juggler or whatever it is. And here are 2 links that we would appreciate you sending out to everybody that you know. And by doing that, a couple things happen. One is, first of all, it gets the word out that your company's growing, which is always a good thing. Secondly, because you've sent the link and the PDF, your message will not get diluted. So they will just pass it on to people that they think is appropriate. Don't prejudge who you think would do. Oh, well, I'm not going to send it to them because they wouldn't know the right people, and maybe they wouldn't, but it doesn't hurt to send an email with those things, again, because they're sending a link with your message the way you wrote it, and it won't get deleted. So that's how you use a careers page. And now I want to talk about grocery stores. Most people think of hiring the way they think of a grocery store, which means they don't think about it until they need something. And they go, oh, I'm out of eggs. Well, I'll run down to the grocery store and get some. Even that weird little spice you use at the holidays, you do it once a year. You don't think about it till you need it. And you go down to the grocery store, or to the Asian market, or whatever it is, and you get some. You don't think typically about hiring until there's an opening. So how's that working out for you? There's got to be a better way. And there is. That better way is called bench strength. Look at how many people on the field are wearing red and yellow. Now look at how many people on the sidelines are wearing red and yellow. That's bench strength. Because in sports, people get injured, they're tired, maybe the game is just going in a different direction, it's not their strong suit, so they pull people off the bench. Now, obviously, you can't keep all those people on your payroll, so where do you get bench strength? Well, think about if you are a football team and you need a new quarterback, you don't just go put an ad in Indeed and say, I hope one shows up. You have farm teams. Now, this is farm teams in baseball. Baseball, they have AAA and AA. They have whole leagues that the big major teams support to grow these people. Football actually uses the college, and we'll see what happened because there was just a case with the NCAA that now they have to pay the college athletes, but we'll see if that changes anything. But these sports teams develop up and coming players. So I don't know where any of these people, well, Savannah Sand Gnats, Modesto Nuts, Vermont Lake Monsters, you probably never heard of any of these teams. I don't know what Homer Simpson's doing there, unless you happen to know or to live in one of these towns. But those are the farm teams for the major leagues. So how do you do this? Here's how you can develop a farm team. First of all, it starts with what we did last time. Know what you want. Know the kinds of people, the kinds of traits, the kind of skills that you're looking for. Then you develop a list of names of people that you not necessarily would hire tomorrow, but you would at least bring them in for an interview. They have met the first cut. Develop that list of names, even if you don't have a place for them. So that's where that guy that I met at Bed Bath & Beyond, he would have been on my farm team. And you book out a couple of hours every quarter to stay in touch with these people. Just send them an email. Hey, here's what's going on with us. What's going on with you? Keep those relationships going. So the tricky part of this is part number 2. Where do you get these names? And like I said, you start keeping your eyes open. I was having a breakfast meeting with a guy, and I got there first. So I'm sitting in the booth, and he walks into the restaurant, waves at me, and goes right over to the counter where he starts chatting up a woman who was wearing a Comcast shirt. And he came over and told me, he said, I met her. She was behind the desk at Comcast. And Comcast is not known for good customer service, but she was incredible. And he said, I really don't have a spot for her, but I would love to bring her on. And so he got her contact information. He was staying in touch. She was part of his farm team. So that's one example. Another example is when you do have an opening and you bring people in and there's 2 or 3 people who you would love to hire, but you only have room for one of them. Well, those other 2 can be on your farm team. Don't forget about them. Tell them why, I appreciate you coming in. We would have hired you. We just had to make a choice. Stay in touch with them. Sometimes people leave your company, but they leave on good terms for some reason that may not work out 6 months or a year down the road. Maybe they left to stay home and raise a kid, and they find out, oh, this isn't as much fun as I thought. I need to get back with the real world, or the kid's ready to go to school or whatever, or they left for another position that didn't work out. Stay in touch if they left on good terms, obviously. Maybe people that work for competitors that you can just, again, keep the relationship going. So that's how you develop this list of names on your farm team. If you have seasonal employees, this is a particularly useful tool because when your season ends, people know that's coming. Well, stay in touch with the ones that you want to come back over the dead season so that they're, you're top of mind for them. And like I said, you can just give them quarterly news, what's going on with you. A lot of times it's the same news to 6 or 7 people on your farm team. It's a cut and paste email. sometimes you'll actually be mentoring a younger person in their whole career path, and that's kind of fun. Maybe you want to go to lunch with them once in a while, that kind of stuff. Dedicate some time to them. So is this a lot of work? Yes, but hiring poorly is expensive. So I would say, what's better use of your time? If you really want to build a good team, you have to be doing it on a consistent basis. CEOs of fast-growing companies often spend a third of their time on hiring. That's almost 7 full-time days a month. And so here's my last piece of advice. Do as many of these as you can all at once. That's what your CEO time is for. And remember what I said about the Department of Labor or any of these where you had a visceral reaction of, oh no, that's never going to work. Well, try it. You don't know. Do you know anybody that met their spouse in some crazy, it would never work kind of way, but it did? This is the kind of thing you have to try. And don't say, well, I'll try this one and then I'll give it a month. And if it doesn't work, I'll try the next one. You don't know what's going to work. So try them all. And so I'm going to leave you with a story of my mother-in-law, who literally this past Saturday turned 102 years old. And we had this birthday party for her at the country club. She's doing great mentally. She's doing pretty good physically. I think she's going to outlive us all. But 6 years ago, when she was moving out of her apartment into the independent living place where she is, we had a garage sale for her. And my wife did a lot of the grunt work for it. And being the tech people that we are, we advertised it on Craigslist and we advertised it on Facebook. And Sylvia, my mother-in-law, said, well, you better put it in the newspaper. And we're like, newspaper? Really? People read those things? So we put it in the newspaper. And sure enough, everybody that I asked that was there, I said, how'd you hear about this? Oh, we read it in the paper. So my point is, you don't know what people are going to respond to. And say, trying to hire is a sales job. And in marketing, you have to reach people where they're at. So stop prejudging, do as many of these ideas as you can, and dedicate some time to it on a consistent basis to build your team. So thank you for your time. If you'd like a copy of this deck, email me. As Joanne said, the recording will be online. Be sure to let me know which session you want, because I do these, so many of them. And one of the things I help companies do is improve their hiring system. So if that makes sense for you, email me. John@ceobootcamp.com is where you can find me. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. It is definitely a process that is not intuitive at all. Like what you think is the best way is seldom actually the best way. And I don't know how many business owners we meet with, both in the law firm and the CPA firm, that are like, people are the problem. The people are what's driving the business owner nuts. It's not the work. It's not the customers. It's not coronavirus. It's like hiring and firing is the hard part for sure. So
yeah,
John,
you just have to dedicate time to it.
Yeah.
How would you recommend kind of drafting that hiring message? You mentioned, post it here and post it there and put it on your website, because a lot of times, and over the years, as we have hired people and we went through different sort of thought process and approaches on what exactly we're going to say in these ads. We've done it through a professional, we've done it ourselves, we've done it on the back of the napkin. What have you seen sort of over time that kind of works just the way you write it, especially taking into account what you mentioned about hiring for character trait, not so much for the skill, character trait first and skill second. Any sort of recommendation on, what so you put in there?
I would say, first of all, be yourself. You're trying to attract, and this is particularly useful for smaller companies. You're not trying to hire 50 people a month the way some big growing, unicorn kind of startups are. So you're looking for those people who resonate with you and your culture. So say that, be yourself in the ad. Don't make it sound bureaucratic if you're not a bureaucratic company. Don't make it sound loosey-goosey if you're not a loosey-goosey company. I do not recommend you talk about the character traits in the ad, because people will tend to game the interview when you do that. If you say, we're looking for an independent person who can survive by themselves, you're going to get all these stories about that. The same person, if you said, we're looking for a team player, they'll come in with stories about how they're a team player. But that's a character trait. And we'll talk in part 3 about how you discover who they really are. But put in the ad why you're such a great place to work, and specifically what you're looking for. And if you can't write up a whole bunch in the ad, which you usually can't because they can be expensive, link back to your career page about that position. And that's where you can go into all kinds of detail. You can even put videos about what a cool place to work is and what fun it is. And you have to think through, why would somebody want to work for you? Particularly if you're a smaller company and you don't have the biggest benefits package. But there are other reasons that working for you makes a lot more sense. There might be flexibility. There might be ability to do different kinds of work or different kinds of training or things like that. So talk about that on your careers page and even in the ad as well. So really, the way to do it is as if you were talking to somebody at a job fair or at a meetup or whatever. What would you say that would attract them? And just try it, and then get the
Can't be
word
worse
out
than
to
what you're doing
everybody you
now.
know. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. Well, I have a really good friend and a client who is a small business as well, and they've had their struggles. And she told me that she said she felt like they had turned a page when people started calling them and saying, "Are you hiring?" She said it kind of meant that there's enough people in the community, because they're a small business, and just like you said, with a small business, it's really hard to, it seems like everybody knows everybody, but when it's time to kind of hire, it becomes really difficult because, it's a small company. And so she said that when people started calling them and saying, "Hey, we heard from so-and-so that, or they work there, or we just hear so much about your company, and do you have any job openings?" And she said it felt like kind of the next step, like it was a win,
And that's a great opportunity, even if they don't have an opening right now, to keep people on their farm team. To say, I'd love to talk to you some more. We don't have an opening but now, but can we stay in touch? Give me your email, whatever. And there's that's the attitude of that. My son had an interesting situation. He was living in Boston, working in some startups there. He's a marketing guy. And he decided that he wanted to move to San Francisco. He just thought it was a hotter market for him, and it was time for a change. So he took a week's vacation, went out to San Francisco, called in all his networks and stuff like that, and came back with 2 job offers. And one of the things he said was interesting. He said, in Boston, I would say to people, I'm looking for a job, and they would say, well, we're not hiring for 2 months or 3 months. Get back to us then. He said when he went out to San Francisco and Silicon Valley, people would say, we don't have any openings for 2 or 3 months, but we better get coffee now so we can get to know you. And just that different attitude. And that's really important, that you are always on the lookout for good people.
Yeah, and it's easy to get lazy about it when you're skating along and don't need people. So
yeah, but you're gonna need people.
Of course.
Somebody's gonna leave, your company's gonna grow. You're always gonna need somebody. So always be looking.
It's interesting that you said about a third of the time. It's mind-blowing, but I do feel better when you say that, because it seems like when we are kind of getting heavy into the hiring, especially when we really need somebody, it seems like that's all you do. It seems like that is really all you do. And now, just like you say, we try to interview even when we're not hiring. We just, when something comes up, we say, yes, we'll interview you to at least meet, or even reach out to people that we've interviewed before to kind of see where they're at. Work with a couple of recruiters as well, just to see, who they have got sort of coming up. And so it seems like it's, you're right, about a third of the time.
Yeah, and the reason that's a shock for people is because when your company is smaller, you as the owner spend your time building your product. But as the company gets bigger, you have to shift into building the company. And that transition can be a shock. It's like but at some point you have good people who might even be better than you building the product, dealing with the customers, and doing the sales. And your job is to build that organization, put the systems in place, find the good people, etc. And so once you realize, oh yeah, that's my job now, then it's not so much of a shock. Still the work, but it's really, that's what you're there for. So.
Well, I have to say, if in the off chance that you get tired of trying to hire and you want to get out, you can tune in next week. And our guest is Whitney Harper, who is an attorney at Advos, which is a business law firm that we work with in Jacksonville. And Whitney's going to be talking about exit strategies. So if you get tired of hiring and you just want to get out, you can learn about exit strategies. So as always, thank you so much, John. Your contributions are very valuable, and we have loved working with you and really have watched our business mature and develop, and it's really cool to sit back and watch. So for the audience, if you do have questions, if you do have topic ideas, we're happy to field those, and we want to make sure that we're bringing to you content that you want to hear. As always, as I mentioned, our webinars are recorded and will be distributed and available after this session. And so if you want to revisit John's awesome infographics, you can take notes again. And if you have other topics you'd like to hear about, please let us know. We will see you next Tuesday with Whitney on exit strategies. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure.